Hello everyone, I hope you all are doing great. In today's video, we are going to dive into the most frequently asked questions from Edexcel IGCSE Biology Paper 1. These are the exact questions that have appeared repeatedly over the last 5 years, and mastering them can help you to secure around 30 to 40% of the marks in the exam. Since the pattern hardly changes, focusing on these questions will give you a greater leverage. So, without wasting any more time, let's just get into it, where I will be solving each of the questions in great details. Moving on. The question from May 19 1B. It says that pollution can occur in the atmosphere, in rivers. Carbon monoxide can pollute the atmosphere. Describe the effects of carbon monoxide pollution on humans. Okay, so what basically is the source of this carbon dioxide, right? So whenever you have a fuel and you burn it in oxygen, you produce carbon dioxide, and this is what we refer to as combustion reaction. And obviously it produces energy and water as well. Now, whenever there is an incomplete supply of this oxygen, or there isn't an abundant supply of this oxygen, it leads to the production of this toxic gas known as carbon monoxide. Now, carbon monoxide has an harmful effect on the red blood cell. Why is that? Because this red blood cell has a pigment that is what we refer to as hemoglobin, and this pigment combines with oxygen to form oxyhemoglobin, and this thing here carries oxygen to different cells of the body. Now, whenever we have carbon monoxide, the hemoglobin inside the red blood cell binds with the carbon dioxide instead of oxygen to form carboxyhemoglobin. And this, as you could see, reduces the amount of oxygen that is being carried by the red blood cell, and as a result, the different cells of our body suffers from the shortage of oxygen, and as a result they fail to carry out respiration, and hence they start to die and so on, right? So yeah, that's what I have written. Carbon monoxide binds with hemoglobin instead of oxygen. Let me just highlight it. So carbon monoxide binds with hemoglobin instead of oxygen to form carboxyhemoglobin, and this reduces the ability of the red blood cell to transport oxygen, and as a result less respiration occurs in body cells, and the body cells then starts to die. Moving on to the next question. It says that water pollution can occur if sewage enters a river. What are the biological consequences of sewage pollution on a river system? So basically, um, this sewage, okay, all right, so it comprises of different organic matters, right? And inside these organic matters we have minerals as well, right? And one of it could be nitrates, right? Now, once this sewage enters the river, the nitrate in it cause this algae to rapidly grow, right? These are algae, a green-like substance that grows on the rivers. Now, this rapid growth of this algae is what we refer to as algae bloom, right? And the effect of the increased concentration on ions on this river that cause this algae to bloom is a process that is what we refer to as eutrophication. Now, yeah, I do admit that they grew rapidly, right? And now they're gonna die. And when they're gonna die, they're gonna be decomposed by the decomposers. And these are organisms as well, right? So to decompose it, they'll be using up oxygen. But what they would be using the oxygen from? They would be using the oxygen from the waters of the river, right? And this would cause the oxygen levels to fall drastically in the river. And once this oxygen level falls drastically, the organisms such as fishes and insects that relied on this oxygen for their respiration and so on is going to suffer from it, right? And they're eventually going to die. And this is going to cause the biodiversity to decrease as well, right? And yeah, the sewage also comprises of some of the pathogens as well. And once this pathogens enters the river system or the lake system, it is going to infect the fishes and insects as well, right? And cause and would result in their death. And yeah, more or less these are everything. Oh, one more thing that I forgot to mention is that as the algae grew on the surface of the water or the lake and so on, right? Now, give me a moment. Now this thing has some underwater plants as well at the bottom, right? But as it grew on the surface of the water, this algae, it would prevent sunlight from penetrating or even entering this bottom part of the lake, right? And as sunlight cannot reach this lower part of the lake, the plants that are residing at the bottom part of the lake are gonna get deprived from oxygen, right? They are gonna get deprived from light, and as a result they cannot carry out photosynthesis, right? And if they cannot carry out photosynthesis, the plants, they aren't gonna produce oxygen, right? Now this thing overall is gonna decrease the concentration of water in the lake. So yeah, let's just see. That's what I've written. Organic matter in the sewage is decomposed by the decomposers, which reduces oxygen levels and make the conditions anaerobic. And this leads to the death of aquatic organisms such as fishes, which causes the biodiversity to decrease. And also minerals such as nitrates and phosphates can cause algae bloom and eutrophication. This also prevents light from entering into the bottom part of the lake and prevent photosynthesis of aquatic plants. When algae starts to get decomposed by the decomposers, this further causes the oxygen levels in the water to decrease. Now, pathogenic bacteria in the sewage can also cause diseases to other aquatic organisms. So yeah, more or less, this is what you have to write. And if you write in this type of way, you're more than perfect to get this 6 mark. All right, moving on to the next question. A balanced diet should include the correct proportion of each component. Okay, two of these components are vitamins and minerals. Now describe the function of other components of a balanced diet. So basically, you know that in a balanced diet, we have proteins, right? And they are needed to build plus repair our cells. And also, you know that we need carbohydrates, right? And carbohydrates are needed for respiration to provide energy in the form of ATP, obviously, to carry the metabolic reactions of the cell. And also you'll be needing fiber, dietary fiber, and this is going to prevent constipation. And we also need water, as this acts as a solvent to transport substances and allow reactions to occur, right? Reactions to take place. So yeah. So first of all, I said that protein, as it is needed to build, and sorry for that, as it is needed to build and repair cells, and then carbohydrate is needed to provide the cells with energy via respiration. Oh, I forgot to mention about lipids, right? So lipids are needed for storage and provide insulation. It basically lipid insulation is because suppose this is your blood vessel, right? And this is your skin, right? Now your skin has lipid in it, right? So the lipid in the skin prevents the heat from your blood from escaping your body and enter into the surrounding, right? So it acts as an insulator. Now, and it also acts as an energy storage as well, as you all know. Water is needed. Water is needed to transport substances around the body and and allow chemical reactions to occur. And dietary fiber is needed to prevent constipation and bowel cancer. I mean, you could ignore that latter part of it, but yeah. All right, moving on to the next question. Okay, it says that explain why a pregnant woman may need to take extra minerals and vitamins. Okay, so first of all, a pregnant woman would need a source of extra iron to make hemoglobin and red blood cell transport oxygen, right? A pregnant woman would also need vitamin C for their connective tissues in the teeth and so on and prevent scurvy. A pregnant woman would also need vitamin D to make teeth and bone. Pregnant women would also need vitamin A for their eyesight. For their eyesight of the baby, for the eyesight of the fetus, right? So yeah, iron. Iron is needed to make hemoglobin and hence red blood cell for the fetus. Vitamin A is needed by the fetus for vision. Vitamin C is needed. Vitamin C is needed to develop connective tissues and prevent scurvy. And calcium is needed to develop bones and teeth. Sorry for it. Calcium is needed to develop bones and teeth for the fetus, and also vitamin D is needed to develop bones and teeth of the fetus. Moving on. This question says that some animals that live in woodland, some squirrel are animals that live in woodland and they feed on nuts produced by trees. Okay, the diagram shows a squirrel eating a nut. Okay, they devise a method that you could use to show that the nut comprises of fat. And this is one of the most common question that you're going to encounter, and this is going to be about a food test. So what you do is you take the nut, you crush it, make it into small pieces, and then you put it inside a test tube, and you then add ethanol and make a solution of it. You mix it and make a solution of it. Now, in the solution, you add water, and if there is a lipid, there is going to be the layer emulsifies or it turns cloudy. The layer turns cloudy in short. So yeah, that's what I have basically written over here. Take the nut sample and then crush it and make a solution using ethanol. And once you have that, you add water to it, and in the presence of water, a cloudy layer forms. Okay, moving on to the next question. So what basically is a catalyst? So we all know that enzymes are catalysts, right? And what does enzyme basically do? It basically increases the rate of a reaction, or increases the speed of a reaction, but it itself doesn't get used up, right? It remains chemically and physically unchanged at the end. So it basically is a substance that speeds up the rate of a chemical reaction that takes place inside the cell, and it itself remains physically and chemically unchanged. In short, you could say that it remains unchanged at the end, or it doesn't get used up, right? Now, what basically is metabolic? All of the chemical reactions that takes place inside our cell is what we refer to as metabolic. Chemical reactions taking place in our cells. Moving on. Discuss why some farmers limit the amount of chemical fertilizers they add to their crops. Okay, so again, that leaching comment and everything, right? So basically what happens is that whenever there is this, if you add a lot of these fertilizers, right? This is the soil, right? And if you add a lot of these fertilizers in it, then if there is a rain, this fertilizer are going to be washed into the lake or river system. And once it gets washed to the lake and the river system, this is going to cause that eutrophication and algae bloom and that thing, right? Now, if you don't know about that, you could just rewind and take a look on the earlier section of it. I have explained it in details, but what another effect of it is going to be, suppose this is the soil, right? And you add a lot of these fertilizers, right? And now there are these plants. So whenever you add a lot of fertilizer to the soil, what it is going to do is it is going to decrease the water potentiality of the soil, right? So what it does is it basically decreases the amount of free water molecules in the soil whenever you add this fertilizers, right, such as nitrates and so on. Now you basically do not need to know about all of this in great details, as this thing is going to be covered in your AS part of chemistry and biology as well. But just know that whenever you add excess amount of fertilizers to something, it is going to cause the amount of free water molecules to decrease, right? And as the amount of free water molecules or the water potentiality of the soil decreases, water from the inside of the plant is going to enter into the soil due to osmosis. Because inside the plant, there is going to be higher water potentiality than the outside, right? And as a result, the plant is going to wilt. So first of all, causes the concentration of ions in the soil to increase, which decreases the water potentiality, and as a result, water moves out from the plant into the soil by the process of osmosis and results in the wilting of the plant. Also, leaching of the fertilizers can cause algae bloom and eutrophication as well, which will prevent light from entering the bottom of the river or lake, which will inhibit the underneath plant from carrying out the process of photosynthesis. And also, as the algae dies, they're going to be decomposed by the decomposers, which will cause the oxygen levels to decrease further and results in the death of what? And result in the death of aquatic organisms such as fishes and so on. This is going to cause the biodiversity to decrease. All right, moving on to the next question. A student uses the light microscope to look at a human chick cell. The student makes this drawing of the cell. Okay, this is the drawing. So name the organelle shown in this drawing. So this is going to be a nucleus. Now, mitochondria are organelles that are too small to be seen using a light microscope. The drawing shows a mitochondria that has been magnified. The actual length is this, and this is the image length of it. Now calculate the magnification. So basically, for magnification, you have a formula that is magnification is image length by actual length, right? Now, this is going to be the image length and this is the actual length. Now, there's something that you have to do at this point, that is you either have to convert this into millimeter or you could convert this into micrometer, right? So what I'm going to do is either way works. I'm going to convert this into millimeter, right? So 1 micrometer equals to 0.001 millimeter. Therefore, 6 micrometer is going to be equals to 6 times 0.001, right? So 6 times 0.001 would give you 6 into 10 to the power 3, right? So what you're going to then do is you're going to divide this Just give me a moment. Yeah, then you're gonna do is what you're gonna oh wait, let's just do the other way around, right? So let's just convert it into micrometer, right? So 0.001 millimeter equals to 1 micrometer. 1 millimeter equals to 1 divided by 0.001. Therefore 60 millimeter is going to be 1 times 60 by 0.001. So 60 divided by 0.001, that comes as 60123, right? And then what you're going to do is you're going to divide this image length by 6. So that should give you around 10,000. And this is your answer. Okay, moving on. Just give me a moment, guys. I'm checking something. Basically. Yeah, moving on. You could have done the way that I said earlier as well, right? You could convert this into and divide it by this thing, right? It would give you the same answer. Moving on. Now, plants are genetically modified to produce insect poison, and they are modified using a bacterium called agrobacterium. The bacterium has a plasmid that contains a recombinant DNA. Describe how the plasmid is modified to have a recombinant DNA. Okay, so this thing is again a really common question that you're going to encounter in your exam. So what you're going to do is, first of all, suppose this is the DNA, right? Now this part of the DNA codes for this rat poison or insect poison, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to cut this section of the DNA using an enzyme that is restriction. Now, once we have cut this portion of the DNA, we're going to take this bacterium, agrobacterium, we are going to obtain their plasmid, and then we are going to cut a section of the plasmid like this using the same restriction enzyme. Now we are going to use the same restriction enzyme, as using the same restriction enzyme allows it to produce this type of sticky ends, right? So this is the plasmid and this is the section of the DNA that codes for this insect poison, right? Now this thing could join together. So to make you visualize, just think of a lock fitting a key, right? So this produce these sticky ends or complementary sticky ends, like a lock fitting a key. And once you have it, you're going to join this thing using DNA ligase. So yeah, that's what I've basically written over here. Let's just take a look at it. So gene coding for the there's a typo, sorry for that. Gene coding for the poison is first of all isolated and cut using restriction endonuclease. The same restriction endonuclease is used to cut a section of the, sorry for that, the same restriction endonuclease is used to cut a section of the plasmid. Then the DNA ligase is used to join the cut section of the gene with the cut section of the plasmid using the same restriction, using the same, and yeah, DNA ligase join, and using the same restriction endonuclease produces, using the same restriction produces this complementary or sticky ends, as I mentioned so far. Okay, so moving on. Give two ways that lipid in the milk is used by babies. Okay, so first of all, this thing lipid, so lipid is used for energy storage, and also it acts as an insulation, as I have said earlier as well. So is used for energy storage and also acts as an insulator, providing insulation. Moving on. Milk is used to make yogurt. Name the carbohydrate in the milk that is used to make yogurt. So this is going to be lactose. Name the bacteria added to the milk to make yogurt. Lactobacillus. Common question. Explain why the milk needs to be heated to a high temperature at the start of the process for making yogurt, right? So basically this is gonna sterilize the milk and kill any organism and kill, suppose this is the milk, right? This is the milk and these are the carbohydrates of the milk. Now this is gonna sterilize the milk and kill any of the unwanted microorganisms such as this, right? Because if they're this microorganism and these are our lactobacillus, then the lactobacillus and these unwanted microorganisms are gonna compete with one another for these carbohydrates, right? So to prevent this competition, we are using this heat. We're heating the milk to kill unwanted microorganisms and prevent competition. Okay, for carbohydrate, and this is done to sterilize the milk. Moving on. Bacteria are genetically modified to make human proteins. Name the uh, which part of the bacterium is used for genetic modification. So this is going to be plasmid, as I have said over there. Plasmid. The passage describes the use of an industrial fermenter used to grow genetically modified bacteria. Okay. The hormone called dash is used to control blood glucose, so it is going to be insulin. Bacteria have genetically modified. Bacteria have been genetically modified to produce this hormone. Okay. The fermenter is cleaned using dash before adding the nutrient that contains the genetically modified bacteria. So basically, hot water or steam, anything works. Steam. The cleaning provides aseptic condition that prevents dash, that prevents competition from other bacteria, as I have said in the earlier question as well. And there are these paddles or stirrers to to evenly mix the contents. Gas cause dash is fermented into the fermented oxygen so that it gives the bacteria the oxygen that they do need to carry out the process of respiration. And the dash is controlled using a water jacket, the temperature. Because there are these genetically modified bacteria and microorganisms in it, right? Now they're extremely susceptible to temperature as they have their enzymes, and enzymes are basically sensitive to changes in temperature and pH, right? So yeah. Moving on. Now, cleft gene is a phenotype believed to be controlled by a single gene, okay? That is two alleles. The dominant allele N codes for cleft gene and the recessive allele N codes for the absence of cleft gene. With reference to the example of cleft gene, state what is meant by the following term, okay? Phenotype. The presence of cleft gene is, or the visible characteristic is what we refer to as phenotype, right? It is basically shown. Okay. Presence or absence of cleft gene. Now what basically is this cleft gene, right? So this is your chin, right? Now some people have this type of V type of structure, and this is what we refer to as cleft gene. Now what is basically a gene? A portion of the DNA that codes for the proteins of this cleft gene, or portion of the DNA that codes for protein. Section of the DNA that codes for a protein. Moving on. Allele. So what are allele? These are alternate forms of gene, right? This, for instance, this for cleft gene, this for the absence of cleft gene, this for cleft gene, this for cleft gene, right? So these things are alleles. These are alternate portions or version of the gene. Moving on. a woman with a cleft chin has a child with a man who also has a cleft chin, and their child doesn't have a cleft chin. Okay, so we are going to do a pedigree of it, use a genetic diagram to show the genotypes, sorry, the cross of it. We're going to use a genetic diagram to show the genotype of the parent, the gamete they produce, and possible genotype and phenotypes of the children. Okay, so as soon as I read that that this woman, the mother has also cleft chin, and the father also has cleft chin, but their child doesn't have a cleft chin. It means that the parents are both in heterozygous condition, because one of the n is going to come from the father and one of the n is going to come from the mother, and these are the recessive allele, right? And recessive allele are only expressed if they are in the homozygous condition. These are in the homozygous condition. Okay, so yeah, you're going to do a cross. So genotype NN to produce the gametes, separate this. Then genotype of the offspring, cross this with this, cross this with that, this with this, and this with this. So yeah, these are the genotype of the offsprings. Now for the phenotype, it is going to be in the ratio of 1s to 2s to 1. So ultimately 3s to 1, because there is going to be 3 cleft chin and 1 without the cleft chin. Okay, so yeah. Moving on to the next question. Farmers may add chemical fertilizers to the soil. Explain how chemical fertilizers can cause an increase in the crop yield. Okay, so fertilizers can provide the plants with this nitrates that is needed to make amino acid, and hence protein that is needed for the growth of the cell, and they could also provide the cells with magnesium, and the magnesium is needed to make chlorophyll and allow the plant to carry out the process of photosynthesis, right? Greater rates of the process of photosynthesis to make glucose to drive their metabolic activities, and they could also provide the plant with phosphates to make DNA slash RNA. Okay, so yeah, this is some of it. So let's just take a look at what I have written. So I have said that fertilizer can provide the crops with nitrates, and it is used to make amino acid and hence proteins that is needed for growth. Also, fertilizers provide the crops with magnesium that is needed for chlorophyll, which enables the plant to carry out the more photosynthesis and make more glucose that the plant can use in the process of respiration, which will provide them with energy. And also, phosphates in the fertilizer is used to make DNA and RNA, right? Is used to make DNA and RNA. Okay, moving on. The diagram shows a food chain from a lake. Okay, name the primary consumer of the food chain. Okay, so these are the producers: primary, secondary, tertiary, right? So small fish. The microscopic plant convert light energy into chemical energy. Okay, as their plants, their producers. Describe the process that converts light energy into chemical. Okay, so basic question: it is the process of photosynthesis, uh, where light is needed to combine carbon dioxide and water in the chlorophyll, in the chloroplast of the plant, right, to make glucose, right? And this is the process of photosynthesis, and basically the plant is absorbing this light energy, right, and converting it into chemical energy. So the process of photosynthesis, where carbon dioxide combines with water in the presence of sunlight in the chloroplast to make what? Glucose and oxygen, obviously, and light energy is absorbed and converted into chemical energy. Moving on. Give two reasons why some of the energy in the microscopic plant does not get transferred to small fish. Okay, So the fish may not eat some part of the plants, and also some part of the plants that has been eaten by the fish may not be digested as well, right? So yeah, this is why energy decreases from one trophic level to the other. So that's what I've basically written over here. Some part of the plant is not eaten, and also some part of the plant are not digested. Moving on. The diagram shows human circulatory system with some blood vessels labeled A to J. Okay. So this thing is carrying blood from lungs to the heart. So this is going to be pulmonary vein. Then the blood is going to be oxygenated. This thing is going to be pulmonary artery. It carries the deoxygenated blood to the lungs. This thing is going to be aorta, hepatic portal vein, and this has the highest amount of glucose because after a meal, um, the food such as this glucose and so on gets to the liver, right? And in the liver, this glucose gets converted into glycogen so that it could be stored. And renal artery, renal vein. So blood entering the renal through renal artery has the highest amount of urea, the waste product in it. And this blood vessel, renal vein, has the least amount of urea, the waste, legs, and so on. So yeah, this is vena cava. Okay. Contains least carbon dioxide is going to be pulmonary vein A. Contain most glucose after a meal is going to be this hepatic portal vein G. Contains least oxygen is going to be this J, pulmonary artery. Contains least urea is going to be pulmonary vein F, sorry, renal vein F. Contains highest blood pressure is going to be aorta B. State two ways in which the structure of blood vessel A differs from J. Okay, so what is A? A is an artery and this is a vein. Okay, so arteries has more elastic tissues, right, than veins, and also the diameter structure of the walls or something. Okay, and you could also say that the diameter of A is narrower. Arteries have a smaller lumen, right, or a diameter. So this is the blood vessel, right, and this is what we refer to as diameter. This has a narrower diameter than vein J. More elastic tissues or has a narrower lumen. Okay, so yeah. Moving on to the next question. Okay, so substances can move into and out of the cell by a variety of mechanisms. Explain the factors that affects the movement of substances into and out of the cell, right? So it basically is referring to the process of diffusion, right? So what are some of the factors that affects the process of diffusion? So first of all, temperature. As temperature increases, kinetic energy of the particle increases as well, and hence they diffuse more quicker. Then size of the particle. As the size of the particle gets smaller, diffusion increases as well. Then surface area to volume ratio. As it increases, the rate of diffusion increases as well. And then the concentration gradient. As the difference in concentration gradient is greater, the rate of diffusion is faster. So what is this difference in concentration gradient? Suppose you have this many particles over here, and on the other hand, you have only 3 particles. So there is a difference between these two medium in the number of particles, right? So as see, the difference is greater. So here you have more particle and here you have less particles. So the difference is greater, right? Hence the rate of diffusion is going to be higher as well. So yeah, that's what I have written. Temperature, right? So as temperature increases, kinetic energy increases and hence the rate of diffusion. Diffusion distance, as the distance decreases, the rate of diffusion increases. Now, steep concentration gradient. Steep concentration gradient, as the difference in concentration gradient increases, rate of diffusion increases as well. Surface area to volume ratio. As it increases, the rate of diffusion increases as well. Size. As the size of the particle decreases, rate of diffusion increases. Yeah, so more or less, this is it. Moving to the next question. The difference between diffusion and active transport. Okay, so diffusion and active transport, it doesn't require energy. It requires energy in the form of ATP. This is an active process and this is a passive process. And diffusion takes place in non-living system as well, right? So for instance, if you spray scent in one part of the room, it sprays to the other part of the room, but it takes place in living substances on living organisms only, because living organisms can make this energy that is needed for active transport to take place. For an instance, suppose this is a highly valuable mineral or something, right? And it has a higher concentration inside. Now there this highly valuable some part of the mineral outside as well, right? Now as I said that this is valuable, right? So what you want to do is you want to take this up, right? So as you take this up, you're doing it against the concentration gradient, because concentration gradient is normally from higher to lower, right? But you are taking it against the concentration gradient, so you basically need to give a lot of this energy, right? And this is what we refer to as active transport. Active transport requires energy, whereas diffusion doesn't. In active transport, substances moves against the concentration gradient, whereas in diffusion, substances moves down the concentration gradient from higher to lower. Active transport is an active process, whereas diffusion is a passive process. Active transport requires carrier proteins, and also diffusion can take place in non-living systems. Okay. Moving on to the next question. Okay, so the diagram shows some hormone producing glands in female body. Okay, so what basically I decide, this is the ovaries produce. So basically these are the ovaries producing estrogen, and this is adrenal glands producing adrenaline. This is liver, and this is pituitary gland. Okay, which of the structure is the adrenal gland? So this is Y, right? Um, sorry for it. There is a bit of a correction. It should be Y. Okay, moving on. So what basically is the definition of an organ, right? So it is a group of cells working together to carry out a specific function. Sorry, group of tissues. Group of tissues joined together to make a structure that carries out a specific function. So this is the by default definition of an organ. Moving on to the next question. Uh, Adrenaline is released into the blood when there is a danger. The list gives the effect of adrenaline on different parts of the body. So first of all, that dilates the pupil, right? So what basically is the pupil? It is the black part of the eye through which light enters the eyes, right? So as it dilates, it allows the person to be aware of the surrounding and the possible danger. Right now increases the heart rate. As the heart rate increases, blood with oxygen and nutrient gets to cells such as muscle cells and so on. And as it gets to the muscle cell, it increases the rate of respiration of the muscle cells, and it enables the muscle cells to produce a lot of this ATP. And as ATP production increases, it allows the cell to quickly move, right? It allows the cell to quickly fight or even flight, to run away and so on. Narrows the small arteries in the intestine, right? So this basically increases the blood flow to the muscle cells, right? Because this thing is unwanted as danger kind of situation. So as the blood flow, this thing and this thing almost has a similar effect, right? So this narrowing of the small arteries in the intestine allows blood to be diverted to muscle cells and so on for respiration and to carry carbon dioxide and so on. And glycogen gets converted into glucose in the liver, so that this glucose could be used in the process of respiration. So yeah, this is what I've written over here. Just let's just take a look at it. Dilation of the pupil allows more light to enter the eyes and enables the person to see the danger or be aware of the surrounding. As heart rate increases, blood supply with nutrients and oxygen increases as well, which increases the rate of respiration and provide the cells with energy. And as small arteries in distant intestine narrows, blood flow to other part of the muscle cell increases. which further increases the rate of respiration to provide the cells with more glucose and hence more energy due to respiration. And as glycogen gets converted to glucose, it is used in the process of respiration, and it basically provides the cell with energy. This enables the person to run faster, right? So yeah, moving on. Some people have a condition called celiac disease, and in this condition, the body reacts with gluten protein found in wheat. The reaction damages the villi of the small intestine. The diagram shows a villi and the small intestine. In the small intestine that are damaged. Okay. Explain how undamaged villi are adapted for their function, right? So basically, uh, inside this villi, there are this microvilli, right? Tiny hair-like structure that increases the surface area and hence the rate of diffusion. And also they are covered with these dense blood capillaries, and it means it maintains a steep concentration gradient or a difference concentration gradient to increase the rate of diffusion. And also these capillaries are made up of one cell thick. This villi is made up of one cell thick, which reduces the diffusion distance and increases the rate of diffusion. And also there is this lacteal, and they are basically involved in fat and lipid absorption. So first of all, presence of the microvilli increases the surface area and hence increases the rate of diffusion. Dense blood capillaries maintains the concentration gradient, and it is one cell thick, which reduces the diffusion distance and increases the rate of diffusion. And presence of lacteal allows the absorption of fats and lipids. Okay, so moving on. Scientists have genetically developed genetically modified crops in order to increase the production by increasing crop yield. So some crops are described as transgenic. So what is transgenic? So transgenic is something that has DNA from a different species. Organisms that contains the DNA from different species. So this is what we refer to as transgenic. Give the two named enzyme involved in the production of genetically modified organisms. So first of all, restriction endonuclease to cut the DNA and DNA ligase to join the DNA. So restriction endonuclease, and it is used to cut the DNA, and DNA ligase is used to join the DNA. Okay, is used to join the DNA. Sorry for it. Moving on. All organisms carries out some form of reproduction, such as asexual or sexual. Describe the difference between sexual and asexual reproduction. Okay, so basically in sexual reproduction, you basically need to form gametes, right? We need to form gametes, and gametes are what? Those sperm cells and ova and so on, right? So this is needed to be formed in sexual, but in asexual it doesn't need to be formed. Also in sexual reproduction, the gametes need to fuse, the sperm need to fuse with ova, right? The fusion is what we refer to as fertilization. So in asexual, you do not need to have that fertilization. In sexual reproduction, there is going to be some variation, genetic variation, where in asexual reproduction, the offsprings are going to be genetically identical to the parents, okay? And also sexual reproduction is slower than asexual reproduction and so on. So in sexual reproduction, gametes are produced, whereas in asexual reproduction, gametes aren't produced. In sexual reproduction, there is genetic variation, whereas in asexual reproduction, fertilization takes place, right? In sexual fertilization takes place. In asexual reproduction, only one parent cell is needed. So yeah, moving on. The diagram shows the structure of a female reproductive organ, site of fertilization, the fallopian tube. This is going to be A. Why does feed in the womb, in the uterus, right? In the womb, this thing, C. The role of hormones produced by structure B. Okay, so basically it produces two type of hormones, such as Mm. Okay, so it basically produces two type of hormones. One is estrogen and the other is progesterone, right? So estrogen is involved in thickening the lining of the uterus, and it is also involved in the development of secondary sexual characteristic of females, whereas progesterone is involved in maintaining the lining of the uterus, and progesterone also prevents the immune system of the mother from rejecting this fetus once it develops, right? Estrogen, right? Estrogen is involved in thickening the lining of the uterus, whereas and development of secondary sexual characteristics, whereas progesterone is involved in maintaining the lining of the one is involved in developing and other is involved in maintaining. Okay, so yeah, moving on. Okay, the diagram shows a section through the human eye. Describe the role of structure ACD in focusing light from a near object. Okay, A, C, D. A, lens, uh, C, cornea, and D, ciliary muscles and suspensory ligaments. Okay, so basically, this is our lens, right? This is our lens, and it is attached to two type of muscles. Now, one is the suspensory ligaments. These are the suspensory ligament, and the other is the ciliary muscle, right? So whenever the eye is focused on a near object, the ciliary muscle contracts, this outer muscle contracts, right? And the suspensory ligament slackens or relaxes, right? Now, as the ciliary, the outer layer of the muscle contracts, it causes the lens to become more flatter or rounded, right? And as it becomes more flatter, it allows for better refraction of the light onto the retina. This is the retina. It allows more bending effect of the light onto the retina that enables the person to see the object more clearly, right? And this cornea is also involved in the refraction of the light. So yeah, that's what I have written over here. So when the eye is focused on a near object, the ciliary muscle contracts and the suspensory ligament slackens or relaxes. You could say slackens, it is more appropriate. This causes the lens to be rounder and refract more light more strongly. Cornea is also responsible in the refraction of light. Okay, so moving on to the next part. Bright light can damage the retina. Explain how a reflex involves structure B protects the eye. Okay. So structure B. This is going to be iris, right? Structure B. Yeah, iris. So basically, this is the black part of the eye, the pupil. This thing is attached to two type of muscle. Ones are these radial muscles, these spooky like tire muscles, radial, and this one is circular. So whenever you enter a bright room, the circular muscle contracts, and this causes the pupil to become smaller, right? And as a result, less amount of the bright light could enter the eye and fall onto the retina, because if bright light falls on the retina, it is going to damage the photosensitive cells of the retina as well, right? So yeah, this is what I've written over here. So basically, circular muscle contracts where the radial muscle relaxes. This causes the size of the pupil to constrict or decrease, hence less amount of light enters the eye through the pupil that can damage the retina. Moving on. The diagram shows an alimentary canal. Explain how food passes through the esophagus, right? Esophagus is the food pipe of it. So by the process of peristalsis, right? So basically, there are two type of muscles over here, that is circular and radial. So one contracts and the other relaxes, and this causes the bolus to pass down through the gut, right? That's what I've written over here. By the process of peristalsis, even if you forget what peristalsis is, if you write that by the process of peristalsis, you're gonna get 1 mark. So this is when a wave of contractions of circular and longitudinal muscle takes place, right? So yeah, that's what I've said. Which structure produces bile? It is produced by the liver, so that is gonna be C. And bile is produced by the liver and is stored in the gallbladder. So let me just see. Yeah, so yeah, sorry for that. It is gonna be C, not D. Moving on. Says that the describe the role of bile in digestion. Okay, so bile is involved in the emulsification of lipid, right? So suppose these are lipids, right? It basically um increases the surface area of these lipids, right? So there's the enzyme lipase could work on it faster, right? And break it into fatty acid and glycerol. And also, um as the food passes through, as the food passes from the stomach, in the stomach we have our acyl acid, right? So the contents in it is acidic, right? And if it gets into the small intestine, it is going to damage the villi, right? So to prevent that, bile neutralizes the acidic content of the stomach. So first of all, bile is responsible in neutralizing the acidic content from the stomach to set the optimum pH for enzyme. And also bile is needed in the emulsification of lipids to increase the surface area for digestion. Moving on. Microprotein is a protein produced by fungi that could be made into meat substitutes. Okay. Large amount of fungus are grown in fermenters to produce this microprotein. Okay. The diagram shows a typical microprotein fermenter. Okay. So basically you provide the air for the microorganisms so that they could respire. This is the nutrients and this is the cooling jacket to control the temperature. And these are the product, and yeah, they feed the nutrients so that they could use the nutrient and the oxygen to respire. Moving on. Explain why air is bubble, right? So to provide the organisms with oxygen for respiration. To provide the I guess this is gonna be fungi, okay? To provide the fungi, not the microorganism. Let me just recheck. Okay, to provide the fungi with oxygen so that they could carry out aerobic respiration. Okay, moving on. Explain why fermented, as I mentioned earlier, right? To prevent competition. We have done a question similar to this in the earlier section as well. So if you didn't watch that, I would highly suggest you to watch that part as I explained this in details over there as well. So yeah, to kill unwanted microorganisms and inhibit competition for nutrients. Moving on. The diagram shows a female reproductive system, okay? Which of the label shows where ovulation occurs? So ovulation occurs in the ovary, so this is going to be B. Ovulation is when a mature egg is released from the ovary, B. Which shows for fallopian tube, that is going to be A. Okay, the diagram shows the changes in the thickness of the uterus lining and the levels of two hormones produced by ovary during menstrual cycle, okay? Uh, Hormones X and Y are produced by the ovaries. Name X and Y. Okay, so first of all, before day 14th, this is when ovulation occurs, right? A mature egg is released from the ovary. So X is gonna be estrogen, because before ovulation, estrogen levels are gonna be the highest. This ensures that the lining of the uterus is thickened, right? So that once the egg is released from over here and it gets to this uterus, and if there is a sperm and fertilization take place, it could be implanted onto this uterus, okay? So it basically remains high before day 14th, right? And this is said this 14th day is said to be the most risky time, right? And this is gonna be this Y is gonna be the levels of progesterone, right? So if there's an implantation taking place due to the fertilization of the gametes, then fetus is gonna get developed, right? And you basically also need to maintain the lining of the uterus, right? So for that, progesterone is required, and to prevent this fetus from being rejected by the antibodies of the mother, progesterone also plays an important role in preventing this. Okay, moving on. Estrogen and progesterone. Okay, so the role of estrogen is responsible for thickening the lining of the uterus and also for any possible implantation. Moving on. The diagram shows a fetus inside the uterus, mother's uterus, inside developing in the uterus. Explain the structure of the placenta enables efficient gas exchange between the substance of the between fetus and the mother. Okay, so first of all, dense blood capillaries adaptation kind of question. So common answer: dense blood capillaries, maintaining concentration gradient and hence increasing the rate of diffusion. And also, they are one cell thick. This placenta, they are one cell thick, which increases the decreases the distance and increases the rate of diffusion. And um, yeah, there are also this microvilli kind of structure, which increases the surface area to volume reach surface area, sorry, and increases the rate of diffusion. So that's what I've written. Dense blood capillaries, which maintains steep concentration gradient and hence increases the rate of diffusion. One cell thick, which reduces diffusion distance and hence increases the rate of diffusion. And presence of villi provides a large surface area to volume, so surface area to increase the rate of diffusion. Okay, moving on. Describe how the student could taste a leaf for the presence of starch. So first of all, the student need to take the leaf, and once the student has the leaf, it need to boil the leaf to kill it and prevent any further chemical reactions from taking place. Then the leaf is generally green in color, right? So to decolorize the leaf, the student again needs to boil it in ethanol to remove the chlorophyll. And once it is boiled in the ethanol, it needs to be washed in cold water. This softens the leaf, and once it is washed in cold water, the leaf needs to be laid on a flat surface, and iodine solution needs to be added. And if there is starch, it turns blue black. Iodine solution color turns blue black. So place the leaf in boiling water to kill and stop the chemical reactions. Then dip it in boiling ethanol to remove the chlorophyll, and then add iodine solution onto the leaf. In the presence of starch, the iodine solution turns blue black. Okay, give me a moment, guys. Moving on to the next part of the question. Oh, so it's a different question. Red blood cell and white blood cell are two components found in human blood. So what are the two other components? So first thing is the plasma, that is the liquid part of the blood, and it carries the nutrients and so on. And the other one is going to be platelets, that is responsible for blood clotting. So some white blood cell destroys pathogen. The diagram shows 4 stages involved in this process. Okay. Describe what is happening in each of the stages. So first of all, the bacterium, this white blood cell is producing extension of its cytoplasm, right, to engulf the bacterium. And once it is inside, this these lysosomes, or this, for your level you could say enzyme, these digestive enzymes are fusing with it, right? The digestive enzymes are surrounded in this tiny membrane bags, and this membrane bags is what we refer to as vesicles. So in biology, whenever you have this membrane bags, this is what we refer to as vesicles. For your level, you could say that the digestive enzyme in the vesicles are fusing with the bacterium and destroying it. And once it is destroyed, it is removed from the cell by the process of exocytosis. So whenever you remove something from the inside of the cell, it is what we refer to as exocytosis. So that's what I've written over here. Let's just take a look at it. Stage 1 and 2. Phagocyte produces extensions of the cytoplasm or pseudopodia and engulfs the pathogen. Stage 3 is when digestive enzyme in the phagocyte then digests the pathogen and destroys it. And stage 4, the remains of the pathogen is removed from the phagocyte by the process of exocytosis. So yeah. Moving on to the next part of the question. It says that genetically modified bacteria are used in human insulin. Describe how genetically modified bacteria are produced. Same question. So yeah, first of all, take the section of the gene that you are interested in. Take the plasmid of the bacteria, cut it using the same restriction enzyme, join it using DNA ligase, and then insert it into the bacteria. Isolate the gene that is responsible for insulin production, cut it using restriction endonuclease, use the same restriction enzyme to cut same restriction enzyme. So there are some typos to cut the here you're gonna add 2 to cut the plasmid of a bacteria to produce sticky ends, and then join the cut gene section with the plasmid using DNA ligase, and the plasmid is then taken up by the bacterium. Okay, so yeah, moving on. Role of insulin. Okay, insulin is involved in the conversion of glycogen to glucose in the liver, and it maintains blood glucose level. Insulin is responsible for reducing blood glucose levels when blood glucose concentration is high by converting it into glycogen in the liver. Moving on. The diagram shows the structure of a human eye. Okay. The name of Z. Okay. Irish. Describe how X and Y controls the shape of the lens. Again, same question. If you haven't watched the earlier part of the video, I would highly recommend you to watch that. So ciliary muscle contracts, suspensory ligament slacks. This causes the lens to become rounder, and this enables more refraction of the light onto the retina. Okay, and this changes that enables the person to see a near or a far object is what we refer to as accommodation of the eye. So farmers and scientists have worked together for the last 50 years to develop crop plants and farm animals with desired characteristic. Explain why selective breeding with crop plant is easier and quicker than selective breeding with farm animals. Okay, so first thing would be that crop plants. Explain why selective breeding with crop plants. Okay, so basically crop plants or plants produce a lot of offsprings, right? Their seeds, and also it is easier to control the environment of the plant, whereas for animals you need to have medicines and so on, right? And also the time to maturity of crop plant is going to be way more faster than the farm animals. So plant produces many offsprings, right? And hence it is easier to, I mean, you understand, right? It is easier for them to for breeding. Also, plants can self-pollinate, and furthermore, it is easier to control the environment of the plants. Moving on. Selective breeding in cattle has been used to improve features such as higher milk yield, longer life, and increased muscle mass. Describe how selective breeding could be used to improve milk yield in the dairy cattle. Okay, so first of all, you select a father that has produced an offspring with higher milk yield, right? You select a father or a bull. You do the same for the mother, right? So you select a mother that has produced an offspring with the highest milk yield as well, and you breed these two. You produce offspring, right? and you take the offspring that has the highest amount of yield of milk, and you then breed them, crossbreed them, right? You breed the offsprings, and yeah, you repeat this for generations. So that's what I've written. Select bulls that produces daughter with the highest yield of milk. Then select cows. Okay, sorry. I made a slight error. It should be, you should just select the cows with the highest milk yield, right? And breed them. And then breed the offsprings that has the highest yield of milk, and repeat for many generations. Okay, so yeah, instead of I made a slight error while saying that select the cows that produce offspring with highest yield. So basically that was redundant. You basically choose cows that already has highest yield of milk, right? And you breed them with the bulls that provides that gives rise to daughter that has highest milk yield, right? So yeah, moving on. Scientists and farmers are also selecting animals based on behaviors. Okay, so just one animal with karma temperament may be suitable. Okay, so it could be because it is easier to milk the cows that are less angry or something like that, and also it is gonna less likely to harm the farmers, right? Easy to collect the milk, and also the cows would be less likely to harm the farmers. Okay, moving on. Cattle behavior is affected by the hormone adrenaline. When cattle are more stressed, they have higher levels of this hormone. The effects of adrenaline on cattle nervous system is similar to the effects of adrenaline on humans. Describe the production of adrenaline and its effect on the body. So basically, it is produced by adrenal glands, right? And it could cause the size of the pupils to dilate. It would cause the heart rate to increase. It would constrict the blood vessel that carries blood to the intestine, right? And so on. Uh, it would also enable or increase the rate of conversion of glycogen to glucose in the liver. So yeah, adrenaline is produced by adrenal glands, and adrenaline increases the heart rate so that more blood flows to muscle cells to provide the cells with energy to prepare for fight or flight response. And also adrenaline causes the pupil to dilate. It also results in the conversion of glycogen to glucose. So yeah, moving on. Give me a moment, guys. Okay, so stress and kettle can also affect the reproductive system, leading to damage of the placenta. Describe the role of the placenta, right? So placenta allows antibodies to get transferred from mother to the fetus. It also allows nutrients to get transferred from mother to the fetus, such as glucose for respiration and proteins, amino acid and proteins for growth. And also placenta is involved for transporting the waste from the fetus into the body of the mother. Placenta allows diffusion of oxygen and nutrients from mother's body to fetus. Placenta also provides the fetus with antibodies from the mother's body. Also, it is responsible for secreting progesterone, right? And it basically it prevents the baby from being rejected by the immune system of the mother. Moving on. Okay, so explain two ways in which a single alveolus is adapted for maximized gas exchange. Okay, so first of all, this alveolus has a grape-like structure, right? And it increases the surface area and hence diffusion rate, and also they're surrounded by many blood capillaries, which maintains steep concentration gradient, right? So yeah. So first of all, could say that grape-like structure increasing the surface area and hence the rate of diffusion, and also dense blood capillaries, which maintains a steep concentration gradient. Moving on. Coronary heart disease is caused by damage to walls of the coronary artery. Explain two ways in which the structure of the wall of artery is different from the wall of vein. Okay, so first of all, arteries has more elastic tissues, and yeah, to maintain blood pressure, and also it has more it has more muscles, right? So sorry, it has more elastic tissues so that it could stretch and recoil during a heartbeat, and also it has more muscular muscles and in the walls that enables it to maintain high blood pressure. So arteries has more elastic tissues that enables it to stretch and recoil during surges of pressure during because of a heartbeat, and also thick layer of muscles to control the blood flow and maintain high blood pressure. Moving on. The teat absorbs substances from mammal's blood it has taken in, give the two function of the named substance absorbed by the tick. Okay, so tick is a kind of a flea that resides on the hair of the person, and it basically feeds on the blood, right? So tick could absorb glucose or carbohydrate for respiration to provide with energy, and also amino acid to make proteins and help cells for growth and repair. Moving on. Tick can pass disease between organisms. Suggest how tick can pass diseases from one organism to the other. Okay, so suppose the tick is feeding on the blood, feeding on the blood of a person that has some sort of an infection, and then it gets transferred onto the hair of another person, and with the same mouthpiece is bite the person. It bites the surface of the head of the person, so to feed on the blood of this person as well, right? And once it does it, as it bites with its teeth, it would cause some of the pathogens to enter into the blood of the second person as well, right? So yeah, that's what I've written. It bites the infected person and passes the pathogen that causes the disease. Moving on. The diagram shows some of the structures label. Okay, which is the style. So this is the style Q. Releases pollen, anther, U. Structure pollen grains germinates on the stigma, P. Moving on to the next question, it says that complete the passage about lungs by writing the words in each of the blank space. Okay. The organ of gas exchange in humans are the lungs. A single tube called dash allows air to move towards the lungs. So this is gonna be trachea. The tube splits into two parts, which then divides into, okay, the tube splits into two parts known as bronchi, and it divides into many narrow tubes called, which then divides into many narrow tubes called bronchioles. And at the end of the bronchioles are tiny air sacs called alveoli, where gases exchange mainly takes place. The lungs are inflated by the contraction of a muscular sheath called diaphragm, and the dash muscles also contract to move the ribs up and expand chest cavity, right? So this is going to be intercostal. Okay, so moving on. The diagram shows the digestive system of a dog with some of the structures labeled. Digestive system of a dog is similar to that of human. Okay, structure is the esophagus, so this is going to be P. Which structure is the large intestine? This is going to be this, T. Which structure contains Villi, small intestine? So this is going to be this thing S. Which is the stomach? Okay, so this is going to be Q. Describe how food is moved along. Again, same question. By the process of peristalsis, circular muscle contracts, longitudinal relaxes, and so on. Peristalsis. This happens when circular muscle contracts, longitudinal relaxes, and vice versa. Moving on. The diagram shows a section through a human eye. Okay. Which structure? Okay, so first thing is gonna be the cornea, H, and also lens. Lens is what? E. Okay, so This is going to be H and AF and H and F. H and B. Which structure controls the amount of light reaching the retina? That's going to be pupil. There's going to be iris that controls the size of the pupil. So iris is what? G. Which structure contains light sensitive cells? So rods and cone. This is going to be retina. That is where is this retina? K. The eye can focus on near object and distant object. Describe the changes that takes place. Again, same common question. Okay. So basically the ciliary muscle contracts, the suspensory ligament relaxes, the lens become rounder. Okay, that comment. So the rays of light when eye focuses on an near object are diverging. Diverging means that the light is spreading in all directions, right? Suspensory ligament slackens and ciliary muscle contracts. This causes the lens to become rounder or convex, and this enables the eye to see the near object and and this procedure is what we refer to as accommodation. Moving on. Biological control using a predator species to control the number of pest is used to control the number of pest species. Okay, explain the advantages of using biological control than chemical pesticides. So first advantage is that whenever you're using a biological control, it doesn't lead to the formation of resistant insect species, and it doesn't cause bioaccumulation, and also it is specific, right? This is specific and only kills the pathogen and or only kills the pest. Okay, so specific and only destroys the pest. That doesn't result in the species pest becoming resistant, and they do not cause bioaccumulation, right? As there is no residue. Bioaccumulation is when something or a chemical starts to build up, right? And that is eaten by humans, and also the biological control lasts longer. So yeah, that brings us to the end of the FAQ. If you found the video to be helpful, then make sure to click on the subscribe button and stay tuned. Okay, and if you do have any problems or you're facing questions in any of the questions, then make sure to comment below. I would be more than glad to help you. Thank you everyone. All the best for your exams.